Hi, Dr. Regan Robertson, CCO of Productive Dentist Academy here, and I have a question for you. Are you finding it hard to get your team aligned to your vision, but you know you deserve growth just like everybody else? That's why we've created the PDA Productivity Workshop. For nearly 20 years, PDA workshops have helped dentists just like you align their teams, get control of scheduling, and create productive practices that they love walking into every day. Just imagine how you will feel when you know your schedule is productive, your systems are humming, and your team is aligned to your vision. It's simple, but it's not necessarily easy. We can help. Visit productivedentist.com/workshop. That's productivedentist.com/workshop to secure your seats now.
So dental school's kind of like taking a bunch of 4-year-olds and making them compete over who can eat M&Ms the fastest, who can jump the highest, and yada, yada. From Seinfeld, you wind up not really liking people when you leave, not liking each other when you leave. So to me, that's super sad. So I try to reframe this, recondition us to collaborate instead of compete.
Welcome to the Everyday Practices Podcast. I'm Regan Robertson, and my co-host, Dr. Chad Johnson, and I are on a mission to share the stories of everyday dentists who generate extraordinary results using practical, proven methods you can take right into your own dental practice. If you're ready to elevate patient care and produce results that are anything but ordinary, buckle up and listen in.
Welcome to another episode of Everyday Practices Dental Podcast. I am your host, Regan Robertson. Chad is off dentisting today. And in his place, I have a very, very special guest, which he's never met me before, but I know all about him. And I reached out on a whim yesterday and said, hey, I would love to talk about your upcoming event. Would you like to chat? And bing, bing, boom, we're here. I'm joined by Dr. Paul Goodman. Hi, Paul.
Hey, Regan, thanks for being here. I love that you used one of my phrases, dentisting. I am the creator of that phrase. I describe it, dentisting, as full contact arts and crafts on people that don't want to be there or pay for it. Pretty much the exact opposite of the Broadway play Hamilton. People do not want to be there or pay for it. So that is my phrase for dentisting. It is a full body experience for both the dentist and the patient. Emotionally, faculty, physically, mentally, that's dentisting.
That is dentisting. I agree. I call it art meets engineering. And I think arts and crafts I like better. That's going to stick in my head. So I first heard about you, Paul, through Dental Nachos. So it's been years now. I think I hang out in the Facebook group all of the time. And I had no idea that you were also part of Dentist Job Connect, which is very interesting because I just heard a colleague of ours hired an associate through Dentist Job Connect and was like a huge raving fan. So when we popped up, if you're listening to us on video, you'll see Dentist Job Connect behind Paul's head here. So tell us about Dental Nachos, Dentist Job Connect, and how you got involved in all of this. And I guess you love nachos, I'm assuming.
It all started with my failed dreams because growing up, I wanted to play professional basketball in the NBA. I keep this basketball around to remind me of my failed dreams. Someone sent me one that says Dr. Nacho. But when you grow to this size and have this speed, you got to get new dreams, different dreams. So this is my backup dream of I am a dentist. I own multiple practices. I founded Dental Nachos, Dentist Job Connects. I'm a speaker. I've helped people buy and sell practices. But most of all, I'm a human being just trying to figure this out like anyone else. When people ask me, hey, what is Dental Nachos? Because if you have any of our swag, you will get asked about it. On the street, at the airport, popular places, I say, hey, that's a great question. Many people ask me that. So one of my tips is to teach people how to talk to people to seem more likable, to seem more receptive. So when anyone asks you a question that's a little bit weird, a little bit difficult, patients, team members, I always say, that's a great question. A lot of people ask me that. Dental Nachos is like a Mr. Rogers neighborhood for dentists.
Oh, stop. That's the best anchoring ever. The Mr. Rogers? Really?
Well, Mr. Rogers neighborhood for dentists, because dentists are really good at being nice to patients, but not so good at being nice to each other. Dental school runs us through the dental student Hunger Games. I have a 5-year-old. I picked her up from her school yesterday. So dental school's kind of like taking a bunch of 4-year-olds and making them compete over who can eat M&Ms the fastest, who can jump the highest, and yada, yada. From Seinfeld, you wind up not really liking people when you leave, not liking each other when you leave. So to me, that's super sad. So I try to reframe this, recondition us to collaborate instead of compete. We have an ABC to FLA mentality, always be connecting to feel less alone. My good friend, Dr. Mark Casas, who I know is great friends with Bruce and Victoria.
Mark's great.
He loves this line that I have. So I always say, being a dentist can feel very lonely, even though you're surrounded by people. And the reason why it feels lonely is I will describe it like being a parent, having to take care of multiple children by yourself would feel very lonely, even though you're technically surrounded by people. So you may have a great team that supports you, like aunts and uncles. But when you are the dentist, you are the only person licensed to do the thing. And that thing is often drilling on teeth. And when you're the only person licensed to do that thing, it's overwhelming. Inside the operatory stress, outside the operatory stress. One time, Regan, I was interrupted from a patient by my team. I would say, no question, too small for Paul. Glad to help him. And they said, there's a bat in the attic. What should we do? That was not covered in dental school. I was like,
an actual bat.
Call the bat people. And the bat people showed up how you expected. I think they had like a racquetball racket and a catcher's mitt.
I was going to say, did you throw the basketball at it?
Yeah. So Dental Nachos is designed to help everyone attached to dentistry feel less alone, especially the dentist. And it's been a lot of fun. It can be frustrating too. People, have you ever heard people say, Regan, that their team is like a family? They treat their team like a family.
Yes.
So I say, oh, good. So that means 3 days into your family vacation, you're all fighting over who took the last iced coffee, right? Because that's what families do.
Sure opens up a heck of a lot of definition, a very wide swing of family for sure.
Yeah. So I say families about, loving each other, caring for each other, and a lot of friction, right? There's friction in my home this morning with my 9-year-old. So I think that it's normal and we need to normalize that. One of the things I share with Dental Nachos is dental students do everything by themselves, lone wolves. And then they get thrust into the real world and they're expected to know how to act as part of a team without any training on it at all. So my hope is that Dental Nachos helps solve part of that problem.
What is the ladder to that? I've seen that in so many presentations because you're an individual contributor and then there's the step all the way up to leader. And there's a lot of steps in between that, but if you get stuck in individual contributor, and don't you think too, I mean, like you said, if your job is the sole job in the practice, associates or not, you want to present yourself as the best. And I hang out on Dental Town forum a lot. And what I see in that in the different Facebook groups, there's lots of different Facebook groups that I see too, that need to protect your identity and your pride makes it very difficult to break down those walls and be vulnerable,
For sure.
to ask for help in the right kind of ways, but to get under the surface. I'm curious, from all the years you've been running Dental Nachos, especially, what's one of your favorite stories that you've seen where a doctor was really able to drop their shoulders and be open and, ultimately be transformed by this environment?
I mean, when people ask about stories, I love stories. I always say stories are the star. One of my awesome sponsors and friends, Studio 88, people remember stories more than facts. They always talk about in their presentations. So one is Dr. Encore Gupta, who's amazing.
Oh, Encore, yeah.
Yes. So Dr. Encore Gupta, first of all, dentist. I would like to use this as a chance to kindly annoy the Encores of the world. When someone does something really nice for you, how about you thank them and stop for a minute and say thanks? I'll get to that in a second. Because many of us as dentists feel really frustrated, Regan, when we sweat on the outside, cry on the inside over your filling. We're working in the back of your mouth. We have a little million things out. We're trying our best. And then I go, at the end of the appointment, I just got my beard trim and haircut the other day. The stylist or the barber gave me the mirror and said, Paul, look at the back. I just want to tell you, not once, Regan, have I made a suggestion about the back. Not once have I said, take more off. But like a normal person, I go, oh, looks good, Araya, right? I have handed patients mirrors and go, oh, do you want to see your filling? And they rip off their bib and say, no, thanks, and run out of there.
Really?
Right? And it's pretty more demoralizing, even though they're paying you. So I'll get back to why Encore should have thanked me in a minute. So we're at an Elijah Desmond event. We're at the gym. Encore's a very tall guy. Never met him in person. And I go, hey, Encore. And he goes, oh my gosh. He goes, you found me an associate. He goes, I use Dentist Job Connect. You found me an associate. I go, oh, I'm so pleased. You could have told me this earlier. He said, because of Dental Nachos, I have an associate working with me, and I really appreciate that. I kind of joked with him and said, I would have loved if you had messaged me when you hired the associate because they'd been working there for a few months. So it took us seeing each other at the gym for him to remind himself. But he tells this story where he had a patient in the chair and he had a problem with their dental implant. So he went to his office, and I think the screw was stripped or broken. There's a screw that holds the implant crown in place. And he typed on Dental Nachos, "What would you do?" And people gave him enough advice while the patient was in the chair for him to fix it. So to me, that is the best, right? That he solved a patient problem in Ohio with people from around the country helping him with clinical things. Then my other example is the person you had on recently, Dr. Maggie Augustin. I am friends with her because Dental Nachos exists. She makes my life better because Dental Nachos exist. I've got to meet her in person. And what really inspires me, that's clinical stuff, is the connections people have made. There are people meeting each other face to face around the country from the Facebook group Dental Nachos, and I have not met them in person. So those are my two really proud stories, because running Dental Nachos can also be frustrating. People on the internet say weird things to each other. I want to share, just because you think something in your head, you don't have to type it. There's no rule, right? There's no rule. Think in head, type it. So I sometimes have to be like, my amazing wife was a kindergarten teacher. I was like, hey, you don't have to tell people they're the stupidest person that you've ever met, right? They go, but I think they are. I go, I understand. I understand. Keep it in your head.
Well, people in person are obviously vastly typically different than when they're online, and you'll find someone being a lot nicer in person. Those are two exceptional stories. And Maggie is well known for her vulnerability, her openness, and she's definitely the first one to throw her hat in the ring and say, here is my bare soul and self. And once people do that, you're able to open up and get further on in life. You have an event coming up just in, a week.
Yeah, week from today.
A week from today. And I'd love to talk about it and why you put it together. And I think it really does fall under the vein, again, of that camaraderie, teaching each other, helping each other understand so that fear can be reduced and you can really know what's best for yourself as a clinician and business owner.
I love this, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to share. So I like my favorite book. If I could tell someone to do two things to make their life better, it would be to listen to How to Speak by Patrick Winston. It has 17 million YouTube views. I get an opportunity to speak often, and I listen to it. I listen to it start to finish at least 20 times a year. So it tells you how to present your ideas, talk to people. It's magical, and it's free because dentists love free. Regan, I don't know if you've noticed, dentists, 114% of dentists like a deal. Their crown preps are works of art. No
as
discounts.
Long as it's high quality, right? Free for free sake is not.
I don't know. I know dentists. You ever see them at an event, they'll take free, any free. Then if they could spend $19, To Sell is Human by Daniel Pink is one of the best books I've ever listened to and read. It reframes how to sell. It reframes how you think about it. So it talks about agitation versus irritation. So I can't control if I say something like, if I type online, DSOs are buying the best practices, and they get the first look at practices that collect over $2 million a year. So it's really hard for a private practice dentist to get a look at a $2 million practice before DSOs have said no. Or you may have magically met someone at a CE event that you have a relationship with. And the main reason someone who has a $2 million practice will not sell to a DSO is just this one reason: they don't want to work for 3 more years. Now, all the things I said were accurate statements, right? If I type that online, some people hear it as, are you saying I can never buy a practice, Paul? Nope, I'm not saying that. Are you saying DSOs are better than private practices? No, I'm also not saying that. So my mission with this event is the title is Private Practice or DSO. Which way should I go? I like rhyming and acronyms. Dr. Bruce Baird is an awesome speaker and sponsor. And we are going to have this. I love sitcoms, like Family Ties, Modern Family.
We had Mr. Rogers. So
Family
Mr.
Ties.
Rogers. Okay.
So these are the people in your neighborhood, right? We're going to have Dr. Bruce Baird, who is like, the wise owl of this private practice, to selling to DSOs, to putting groups together, to Productive Dentist Academy. I had introduced Maggie to the Productive Dentist Academy over the pandemic when they were sponsors. So I'm very proud of that.
What?
Yeah. So that's how you guys know Maggie through Nachos. So
wow, this is a small world, and how I've never met you so far except on this podcast. This is pretty crazy.
We have to meet in person
yes.
soon. So we have people who are experts in the DSO and private practice space. I'm a big fan of this guy, Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm a big fan of both, not or. So it's not DSO versus private practice. It's DSO or private practice. I have Dr. Ashley Azadi and her husband, who are fantastic practice owners in Maryland, and they have a group practice, and they're going to talk about how private practices grow. We have Brian Hanks from Dental Buyer Advocate talking about buying your first practice. We have McLaren and Associates talking about what's the deal with DSO deals, how much money can you get. We have a financial planner's attorney. So basically, I put this whole big fan of like First of all, one of my favorite people is Lin-Manuel Miranda. He is an international treasure who should be protected at all times. Hamilton, Encanto. So I kind of role model this after like these Broadway play things where you see these characters. We put a show on for you to learn, laugh, feel less alone, and also have uncomfortable conversations with yourself. There's many dentists. Because dentistry is such a cave profession. I describe it like I don't know if you ever saw Game of Thrones, but it's like
I made it through a couple of seasons and then it got pretty heavy for me.
yeah, I didn't like the ending, but it's that dentists are kings and queens of their own castles, and that comes with a lot of stress. But it also comes with I don't have to ask anyone permission to do anything, and that mentality inside of their dental practice as a leader may help them be successful. But when they step out of it and start to learn about business and other things, they're often threatened by ideas that just exist. Dentists would be threatened by gravity if it wasn't inside of their practice, right? They'd walk outside and be like, I don't like this gravity thing. And I go, well, it's just the thing, dentist. So DSOs buying some of the most productive practices is a thing. Productive practices looking to partner with other private practices is a thing. So we're going to talk about all of this on Nacho TV, live studio audience in Philadelphia. People who are listening to this later can get the recording for free, and they're going to learn about this is who we're trying to help, Regan. I always like avatar stuff, right? I am a 47-year-old private practice owner. My practice collects $1.5 million a year. I have 6 operatories. I'm successful and I'm very stressed. And I want to pay attention to what's happening over the next decade so I can be well informed as to what I want to do.
Your books pay off, Paul. Everything that you read 20, that was the best elevator pitch I've ever heard. Donald Miller would call it your one-liner. That was it. Thanks. I'm so grateful for what you're doing right now. Unbelievably so, because of being ill-informed can make or break people in the worst way possible. And I've been with PDA this is my 13th year now. And so to see the dentists that were lucky enough to prepare well, that's great. When I saw that, I think it was an ADA statistic that said, 95% can't retire and maintain their lifestyle. And when they get to that point and you're out of time, that is the worst feeling. I think it has to be one of the worst.
I love what you're saying. My goal is for people to be proactive instead of reactive.
Yes.
We helped Maggie hire an associate proactively, but I don't think if she knew me, she would have been as proactive because I kindly annoy people into good decisions. So if you're a solo GP and you don't have an associate dentist, you should be fearful that if you get injured, no one can be in your practice. That's just a fact. If you're a group practice with 3 associate dentists right now, you should be fearful that one of them is thinking of moving across the country to follow their spouse, or one of them is thinking of starting their own practice. So I want dentists to be proactive. And it's the same with this selling of your practice. If you say to a dentist, when do you want to sell your practice, Regan? Many say, I don't know.
They always say they don't know.
And then you say, do you want to practice till your last day on earth? They say, God, no. So I say, now we have to talk about what is the most reasonable treatment plan for you, not the dentist down the street. And that's what we're going to talk about at this show with all my expert friends. They know more than me. These people are living this all the time.
I know it's not titled treatment planning for your practice, but it really should be titled. So the real deal on what it means to sell your practice to a DSO or keep it and grow it yourself. Chad Johnson has joined us. Dr. Chad Johnson, I see.
I am fresh in off the road. Hey, everybody. Thanks for taking me late. Hey, doing all right, Dr. Paul. Good to see you.
Good seeing you too.
We were just talking about the event that Paul is hosting, and it is the real deal on what it means to sell your practice to a DSO or keep it and grow it yourself. So cool. I know. Yeah. Buckle up if you've not. Have you met Paul before? I don't think you two have met.
Not in person or anything. So yes, this is about the most interactive that we've had. So basically up until this point. Yeah.
Face to face.
Yeah.
I'll ask you, Chad, you're a dentist like me. We're professionally weird. We went to school for it.
That's right.
Why do you think dentists it's always bugged me from dental school till today, 1999 till 2024. Why do they seem to be threatened by new ideas? I'll explain. You know that if there was dental nachos during the amalgam to composite thing, people would be yelling at each other saying, if you try composite, you are the worst dentist on earth. Sure. Amalgam to composite. I am very passionate about how I think a 3-unit bridge where you prepare 2 teeth to replace one is an idea that doesn't really make sense. In my practice, we refer those to prosthodontists because we offer people a dental implant, no treatment, or some type of removable appliance.
Okay.
But dentists, now we're talking DSOs, they get emotionally threatened by a new idea, and it boggles my mind. Why do you think that is?
Because there's a cost associated with it. And so I think that if a business owner sticks around long enough, they'll have tried a failed idea, and that failed idea has an expense to it. That's my only general thought, is that, you know, they get jaded over time to be like, oh, you want me to try this 10th thing? Now, if a dentist were honest, they've tried 10 things and 4 of them have worked, or 8 of them have worked. So, but not all 10 of them have worked. And so they've been burned. I think that's what's your thoughts on that? I mean,
well, I live in this world, and I might be, people have called me gullible, too easygoing. People take advantage of me. That's my wife. She says that about me, right? But my personality is, if you told me, young dentist, I'm going to do a lunch and learn, and I can stick around for another, I'll stick around to the end to this lunch and learn. I'm going to talk to these dental students. And many of them say, I don't want to do a GPR because I heard my friend did a terrible GPR. Yeah. But I go, why are you thinking the 2 out of 10 is going to happen to you? I'll say, take 10 CE courses. 5 will be okay, 3 will be great, 2 will stink, and live for those 3 great.
Yep.
Why are they trying to make sure nothing ever stinks for them? Yep. Which is impossible to do.
Yep. I'll give you 2 examples. One for dentists. When we explain to patients that they need their wisdom teeth removed, people go, oh, I heard from my uncle how horrible of a situation it was. And I just go, yeah, but the biggest complainers are the ones that are going to make sure everyone and their mother heard about how horrible it was, right? So there's one situation where I just go, listen, you can't just listen to the minority stakeholders and be like, well, therefore no one should get their wisdom teeth removed. Right. Or another one is if someone goes, yeah, like my aunt told me that having kids was so hard, and so I'm just not going to have kids. It's just like, no, it's worth it. Listen, it's, it is tough, but at the same time, just because some woman told you that, childbearing was a horrible experience for her, doesn't mean that therefore we should, humankind should just stop having kids. It's like, that's not true. So there's a couple situations for dentists and for, people in general listening to this. It's fair enough to say, if we listen to the naysayers, we would never progress.
Yeah, I mean, I always say, Regan, live your life in the most, not the lightning. Dentists always think that that one negative thing will happen to them because they heard a story. I mean, Regan, I want to ask you a crazy question. Have you ever gone to a restaurant and had a not so great meal? Has that ever happened? Of
course. Yeah.
So you stopped going to restaurants forever, right? Because that's what dentists do.
Well, no, of course I didn't stop going to restaurants. What you're describing here is the stages of adoption. So the 5 different stages of adoption. There's an interesting demographic when you speak to dentists specifically. I lived in a bubble for the first few years in dentistry because I'm outside of dentistry. So the doctors I met, Paul, were all productive dentists. Yeah. I thought all dentists were productive dentists. And by that, I mean, they had an abundant mindset. We are co-founded by 2 founders that are innovative early adopters. And that's exactly what you're describing, Paul. They will try it. They have no problem with the cost. They'll take it. That is not the majority of dentists at all. And I even identify myself at times as all the way at the end of the stage, which is late stage adopter. If we can, and what you're doing, Paul, what I see is you're being a beacon of light and you're helping pave the way for those late stage adopters to see at a very low level of risk and reducing the fear by letting them know, here are your options. Here is the full story for if you're going to stay in private practice or you're going to go to a DSO, or if you're going to adopt a new technology piece. You just have to go about it in a different way. So I do think you're correct. I think the majority of dentists are more late stage adopters. Self-awareness on their part would help a lot, which I don't always see.
Yeah.
I have met some dentists.
What happens is no one's there to help them be self-aware because you're the king or queen of your own office and you have to run it and you have to be that person. That's why I encourage people to go to face-to-face CE and come to events and be, have friction. I always say there's a difference between friction and fighting, and friction is normal. That's uncomfortable discussion. And, I say to dentists all the time, and listen, this is an easy answer. Hey, Chad, do you want to be the first person to try doing root canals with nacho cheese? Because we've heard that would be better. You want to be the first person to try that? And you go, no, I don't want to be the first person. I want to see if other dentists do it first. Yep. And it sounds like you're a good guy to do that, But then if you think about it, we'd never try anything new. No one would have tried a dental implant. Nobody would have tried a composite filling. And then on the other side, you can't be irresponsible about trying new things. Like Dennis will say to me, I'm never going to use a coach or a consultant because I
Right.
heard my friend give someone $100,000 and they scam them. I go, first of all, who told someone to give a coach $100,000? I do as much coaching out there, business, personal, this. I've never said, here's $100,000 check. So already that was a problematic way to get engaged with coaching. And you see this, and it's a, I don't know, Chad, we're not very cool sometimes. We're like your grandmother hiding behind their blinds, saying everyone's out to get us out there. And I'd like to toughen us up a bit.
I'm all down with that. In fact, I had an ADHD moment. I realized you're holding a basketball.
Oh yeah, well, we talked about my failed dream. Well, I'm in this. We talked about my failed dreams of playing in the NBA, so that's why I'm here. So if I'd been better at basketball, none of this would have existed. And if they make a senior NBA,
you mentioned height, like right in the beginning, Paul, and I was gonna say, hey, Dana Barros was a point guard for the Supersonics. I am not much of a sports gal, but my mother is, and so I had to listen if it wasn't on TV on the AM radio, and Dana Barros was my guy. So
I remember him well. He's
you do
a small point guard too. So I mean, that was but I also use this example as we talk about things. If you think of dentistry like basketball, the challenging part for dentists, Chad, and give Regan an example, is like we don't get any practice. What I mean is you can go practice 3-point shots and then go play in a game. And one of the challenging parts for dentists, especially new dentists who've kind of been, I don't know what's the word is for it, Chad, scammed by their dental schools and not given any experience,
Sure,
is that they are now thrust into the real world and everyththing's an in-game scenario.
Yeah, they've theoretically learned, but they've not engaged in, the last minute. Like, I mean, if you've played basketball, then the last 2 minutes, if you're down 10 and you're going, okay, do you guys want to win this? Are we all in? If so, do you have a history of the last 100 games where maybe you've pulled it off once?
Yeah.
Well, then this is going to be easy, but it's like, we've never played in a game before and we're down by 10. It's just like, oh, we're hosed.
And it's tough. What I'll share is, and I have some pretty funny on this, is, when you go to have a baby at the hospital in Philadelphia, they bring in a resident, a chief resident, an attending, and everyone's learning from this experience. And that's how doctors get better.
Yep.
Sadly for dentists, if you bring another dentist into your operatory in private practice, the patient freaks out.
Yep.
Even if you're trying your best. And I think it's really hard, especially on new dentists, to develop clinical competence and confidence, because no one really wants to give them a chance to be their test out case. And I think that's the biggest challenges we have.
Yep.
So how do we build those little proof points for them? What's the best thing? Getting involved in dental nachos?
Well, one is Nachos is great for, I would say you have your dental core, your mind skills, your word skills, and your hand skills. Back in the 1980s and 90s, all you did was bench press and bicep curls. And we found out, hey, that is not a good way to get fit. You now do Pilates and core activities. Yeah. So Nachos helps with a lot of, mind skills, patient communication skills. Someone who was at the Productive Dentist Academy meeting, and my sponsor, Ripe Global, is they have created a practice basketball court for people to learn fillings, crowns, implants.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. They basically, you go into your operatory. The thing that's cool about this, Chad, is we've gone to see courses at a Ritz-Carlton, and I'm drinking coffee and I'm listening to the Dr. Bruce Baird, and it's great infotainment. But when you get back to your office, how do you implement it? So this is like they teach you to cook in your own kitchen. You're in your own operatory with your own materials on WebEx. And when you do the crown prep boot camp, you do 14 crown preps in one day. And by the end of it, they say, see, you've gotten more efficient. So it's not just for new dentists. Right now, the people really embracing Ripe Global are new practice owners, because they know they got a lot on the line. Mm-hmm. They have a key to their office and they're saying, I better get more efficient. Like Dr. Nathan Adias, who I'd love to introduce you to, he's a solo practice owner, and doing Ripe has allowed him to fit in more emergencies, get home to his family earlier. But that is one of the basketball courts that's being created by them.
I love that. Regan, Ripe was at our last meeting, and I had been following them on Facebook and Instagram for a few years. I recommend every dentist, just on your Instagram, Facebook, whatever social media, look up Ripe. And what's cool is, they send you modules. They send you modules to do in your office. And it's, just the CE practice that's the engagement that you're given a mentor, that online basically you can get a report card of sorts, you know, to show
You have to show your work. You have to show your work.
That's really cool. It's really, I think I actually found it funny that you said that it's a lot of owners, first-time owners and stuff like that. I would have thought it was dentist owners giving their new associates that experience.
They're doing some of that, but as we finish up, so I just signed up my 2 associates for the Ownership Accelerator with Aaron Nicholas, and he's awesome. He's a sponsor, and that's all Zoom, and it's mainly mindset and efficiency, no models. But I have empathy, compassion for these associates. It's a lot for them to process something new and take it after hours. So what I think is the owners that are successful I have this group in Delaware, they take it with their associates, meaning like they're all in the office together.
Perfect.
Because sometimes you're just like, here's the keys to my office, go in on Saturday and start prepping crowns. It sounds good. And I think they need to solve that. But right now, that's what seems. And one of the things I'll share is, with Job Connect, I tell owners, let's say, Chad, you want to pay an associate $200,000 a year.
Okay.
Here's what you offer them as a base, right? $175,000 base, and I'll pay for the right global continuum for you, which is $25,000. And then you both win, because sometimes left to their own self, they won't pay for it.
Yes.
And now you guys have both won. So that's what I think is their next step, is for people to bake that into their associate contracts.
How that also wins is then the associate isn't paying for it personally after they've paid taxes, but you as the owner, if you're allowing yourself to pay for that, you're doing it as a business expense.
And tie it to like staying for 16, 18 months or something, right? It doesn't have to be, punitive, but like, hey, if we do this thing together and you don't stay for this amount of time, you got to pay me back for the course.
Man, that's almost like a qualifier too, because if somebody says no to that, you have a big red flag right away on education.
Well, actually, I want to tell you a good story, because that one of our associates we found for an office, I'll keep a HIPAA, I have HIPAA for associates. They offered this to their associate. They said they didn't want to spend the time doing it, and now they no longer work there. They didn't get fired because of it, but it was kind of a good test. It's like, hey, I'll get you this gym. I'll sign you up for it. You just got to go to the gym and do it. And if they don't want to do it, they're probably not the right mindset for you.
Yep.
That has been one of the best secrets of PDA for me as an employee for 13 years has been anything I want to take, anything that's going to help me, anything that's going to aid in my growth or help me do the job better. They have invested. They will invest in education, and that has just locked me in. So I think that is such a brilliant tip. That's great.
It's the abundant mindset. So I love this kind of focusing on helping the next generation do better, with the agenda of helping everybody, the patient, the office, the team, the assistants. It all helps everybody.
Well, Paul, thank you for taking time out of your day. I know you are busy preparing for your upcoming event. Where can people find out more about Dental Nachos, Dentist Job Connect, and your upcoming event?
Awesome. Well, our 2 websites, dentalnachos.com and dentistjobconnect.com, are the easiest ways. And if you're listening and you want to see the awesome Bruce's lecture from this event, please just reach out to me through Dental Nachos or Dentist Job Connect. I'll be glad to send you the recording. So if you happen to have missed it, you can learn, laugh, and feel less alone.
Very cool. Well, thanks for joining us today. Thanks for letting me join late.
Oh, my pleasure. Great conversation, guys.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Everyday Practices Podcast. Chad and I are here every week thanks to our community of listeners just like you, and we'd love your help. It would mean the world if you can help spread the word by sharing this episode with a fellow dentist and leave us a review on iTunes or Spotify. Do you have an extraordinary story you'd like to share, or feedback on how we can make this podcast even more awesome? Drop us an email at podcast@productivedentist.com. And don't forget to check out our other podcasts from Productive Dentist Academy at productivedentist.com/podcasts. See you next week.